It's great to be with you today. Good afternoon. I hope you're feeling energized and well-fed and excited to get your week started. I want to begin by offering some special thank yous to the people who make these kind of events happen. And top of that list is your director, Dr. Wall. The two of us actually go way back. I think we met in a situation that's a lot like the one you're in right now, rubbing shoulders when we were both students at Texas Tech University. We became friends there and stayed friends through the years. I dug up a couple of photos that I thought you might like to see. This one's got to be my favorite. So you can see Dr. Wall there with my partner Chad, my partner in science and in life. We shared a moving van when we left Texas. I went up to Kansas to do my MA, and Sean went to Nebraska for Dr. Wall to earn his PhD. And this was taken with our daughter, America. She was about 2 years old. We were about to go to a football game because Nebraska and Kansas were playing, if I remember. And I think I remember it didn't turn out well for Kansas at the time, right? So we stayed friends throughout the years, connecting up at conferences and writing together. You're going to get to meet this fine guy, Dr. Myers, near the end of the week. The four of us have had a really good, successful and fun time writing textbooks together and letting our own work as we've developed at our various universities inform one another's approaches. I also have to say a very special welcome, somebody else you may know. This is the newest and possibly the best thing that Western Michigan University has shared with all of you. If you haven't had secret space for a class, I encourage you to take one if you can. This guy, and you know this if you know him, but I have yet to meet somebody who is as powerful a combination of brilliant and warm and encouraging and enthusiastic. So it's really good to catch up with Stephen. And we'll be talking a little bit about work that connects to his own research because his mentor from Western Michigan University, Patrick Spence, is also on the robotics team, and he's very instrumental in a lot of the work that I do. And last, thank you to Lena and Eric Morris, just a hearty, it's good to see you. I had the good fortune of getting to know both Drs. Morris at University of Kansas when we were students together. And most of all, students, thank you for sharing your lunch hour with me. I'm really looking forward to hearing what you have to say and some of your reactions to the questions that I'm going to pose, because what I'm talking about today is very much unfinished and in the works, and I need perspectives like those that you'll bring to the table. So I want to start by talking a little bit about the broad kind of work that's been going on in the communication and social robotics labs. This is technically a partnership. It's not like a one place. It's more of a network of people between Western Michigan University and the University of Kentucky. So what we tried to do is create some intellectual synergy. You probably have figured this out, but it's kind of odd for communicologists to be studying robots, right? We don't do a ton of that. And there aren't that many in the discipline. So we've made a concerted effort to get to know one another, to band our resources together for very practical reasons, including getting access to technologies that are often very expensive and that are more likely to be found in engineering and computer science programs than in humanities sorts of programs. So this all came about when Chad Edwards, my partner, myself, and a colleague named Dr. Patrick Spence, who's now a professor at University of Kentucky, started talking. This happens a lot when professors are also friends with one another and their offices are too close not to be overheard, right? So we were having a lot of conversations about this general observation, and you've noticed it. This is a really important time to be studying communication because what we're seeing is a transformed relationship between human communicators as sources of meaning and messages and the kinds of entities that we're now letting into the realm of those things with which we can communicate. So if you look at the history of the way we've treated machines in our discipline, from really early technologies like the telegraph, we've conceptualized all of these things as basically a way to mediate the relationship between two human communicators. And that's broadly what we've called computer-mediated communication. But something has been happening that disrupts this quite a bit. And that's that moment when suddenly you pick up your phone and you're not using it to talk to another human person. You're actually talking to your phone, right? This happens to you all the time, right? You might talk to Siri or Cortana and interact with the onboard AI. For me, in the mornings, it's poignant to me that my very first interaction is a machine interaction, even if it's just using a voice command to actually turn off my alarm clock. And often my last interaction of the night is also an interaction or a textual exchange between myself and a machine. And this is only growing more common and more eye-catching as we're starting to put these machine intelligences in embodied forms that really call upon us to act in natural ways that reach out to them as partners and not just things that we can go through. And of course, we can take this even one step further and think about the various ways in which we find ourselves talking to each other or to machines inside machine environments. Virtual and augmented realities and mixed reality settings are a prime example of that. Sometimes we're inside the machine with our entire environment rendered around us, talking to interlocutors that are both digital and embodied human persons. So it's a good time to stop and take stock. And for me and Chad and Patrick, who only Stephen knows what he actually looks like because he doesn't like to be photographed. So this is the photo that he provided. But we're talking together about these things and thinking, how are we going to deal as a discipline of communication with this influx of machine communication partners? Will our old theories of interpersonal communication and mass communication still hold? Will they work? Or are we going to need new approaches because there are some fundamental differences in the type of sources that we're dealing with? So we're the 3 faculty co-directors. We also have a number of research affiliates, and these people are very instrumental also in the work. So for example, Tim Selnow is a professor at University of Central Florida. After we started the lab, he said, I've got a contribution to make. Can we tie our boats together? We've added David Westerman, who's at North Dakota State University. He's an interpersonal and computer-mediated communication expert. And Ken Lakeland, who studies crisis and public health, heading University of Connecticut's department. So we've got these research affiliates. We also have postgraduate fellows. These are students who graduated from Western Michigan with a master's in our communication program. They worked in the lab during their time at Western, and now they're in robotics labs at other places, kind of helping keep us connected. Our most recent postgrad fellow is this guy here. Some of you may have met him if you've traveled to our communication conventions, Riley Richards. Does anybody recognize who he's pictured here with? Yeah, you can see Shaylee Moore. How many of you had Shaylee for a class, maybe as a teaching assistant? Yeah, so Riley was in London presenting research at a robotics conference, and Shaylee was kind enough to take him to their shared homeland in Ireland. When I asked Riley for a picture, he sent this one, and then a frantic message afterwards on Facebook like, wait, okay, I don't want them to get the feeling that all communication scholars only care about beer, and et cetera, right? So I'm supposed to tell you that this is a legitimate pilgrimage for communication scholars because William Seeley Gossett, who invented the quantitative method called the t-test, was chief brewer here. So Riley went and got his picture taken with that. But as I told him back, that doesn't explain the gift bag, right? I don't know what he's doing with that. Tells a little bit of a different story. So probably the most important, we've got this great structure of people, but this is the heartbeat of the lab. These are our current undergraduate students, just like you, who form the team. They're organizational and public relations and digital storytelling and journalist majors who have some kind of special interest in machine communication or in talking about it to a wider audience. So they're in the lab. These students are really great because they are scientists. We're always inquiring. They're bringing research topics and starting their own studies and running their own experiments. But they're also makers, because part of what we've decided is that having human-machine competence is also about being able to speak machine languages, and it's about being able to talk and converse. So broadly, the kind of work we've done in the lab so far, our published studies have focused on virtual and augmented realities, how we connect with the altered presence in those systems. With artificial intelligence, sometimes it's disembodied, like Siri. Other times we've looked at avatar, digital representations of self. Wearables and the Internet of Things. We've got some cool studies going on right now about privacy with Amazon's Alexa and the Google Home, which is on everybody's mind. And of course, a lot of studies with embodied agents, when the machine intelligences are inside something that approaches what we're used to relating to with each other. So here's a quick photo of some of the students engaged in their projects, doing their various things. All right, so all of us think a lot about this image. It becomes a kind of shorthand, symbolic importance in the lab. the graphic designer in our College of Arts and Sciences, put this together for us. And you may have seen depictions like this in popular culture right now. But we think a lot in the lab about that little gap in between the two, right? They're approaching these two kinds of entities, the flesh and blood embodied human and the machine communication source, but they're not quite touching yet. Most people would say that. What's in between? How big is the space? Is it bridgeable, or do we only ever kind of encompass it? These are the kinds of issues that we try to address in the research. When we first started the research, this distance was pretty great because the technology wasn't very advanced. So a lot of you have probably seen telepresence robots like this. Have you seen them on campus? Maybe in popular culture, Big Bang Theory has something like this, right? Shellbot, those kind of things. We started with these kind of machines, and what we wanted to do was basically see how do people interact with them. Like if they're asked to do a simple task, maybe talk about how their day went so far, make a really easy decision together, negotiate a conflict scenario. What's the difference in how they would engage one of these units versus how they might engage another person? This is our very first robot. We call him Herman. At the time, it was so far before people had seen these telepresence robots that sometimes visitors to the lab would think there was a little guy hiding inside the box right here. At the end, they would ask, like, "Is it work?" Like, someone in there operating it, right? Because telepresence was fairly new. But we did a lot of good work, work that we're proud of, that established in general, from a result of a series of studies, what we've called the human-to-human interaction script. And it's just a documentation that there's a, my mic's going in and out, isn't it? Yeah. It's a documentation that there's a really heavy, should I switch this out? All right, I'm just gonna ditch it. Can you still hear me? All right. So it's a documentation that you know this if you've cracked open even a basic communication textbook. When we talk about communication, we tend to be talking about communication with another human person. That's what other people expect in their partners. Is this on? Okay, like it has to be a presentation on human-machine communication, and I break up every microphone that you have. All right, so the human-to-human interaction script says people usually think if they're about to interact, it's going to be with another person. This was simple to establish. We have people come into the lab and we'd say, oh, we're going to have you meet with a partner in the room next door. The two of you just have to figure out a good plan for what you're going to take on this desert island scenario. And then we would pull back the curtain, and it was either a real person or it's one of these robot units. And of course, seeing a robot there, people are a little wary about it. They tended to anticipate less liking and less social presence from those interactors, and they were pretty nervous until they had some interactions, sustained interactions under their belt. So we've used this to basically challenge a little bit of the fundamental expectation we have about what counts as a communication partner, but to also start to identify some of the things that matter. When do people actually feel that it's a comfortable interaction? When do they let down their guard? And to that end, our studies on social presence have showed there are lots of little things that can happen. For example, humanizing the machinery just a little bit. Our students came up with ideas like putting eyebrows or just a bow, and we found measurable differences in how much liking, credibility, and attraction were perceived in those interactions. But here's when things really got interesting. This is the story that led to the research that I want to share with you today. This is when we acquired our first little humanoid robot. This is Nico right here. He looks really cute, like he's kind of crouching in his chair. Nico was donated to the lab. A student, just like one of you, thought this is something that we really need. At the time, these were $14,000, right? State of the line. Really expensive for something that's smaller than a toddler. But she had great initiative. Her name's Katie Martini. She got on some developers boards and just put out the feeler that we could really use this technology to forward our educations and our research. And within a few weeks, somebody was using Nico basically as a toy in Seattle, and he said, you need this device more than I do. So he shipped it across the country and gave it to us. And it seemed like it was going to be a simple matter of popping it out of the crate and plugging it in and getting it running, just like all of our telepresence, Skype on a stick type units, but it wasn't. These days were chaos, but in a really interesting way. So we got little Nico out. It was already powered up, And right away, the eyes come on, and there are some naturalistic little kind of movements. We're in a small lab, definitely violating the fire code. We probably had 20 people in a tiny, faculty-sized office, and Nico on the floor. And what I noticed is that chaos ensued about how to interact with Nico. We wanted to start with a very simple task. We were trying to get Nico to speak Spanish because we'd heard that's something that these units could do. So I noticed there are people who immediately get down on the floor with Nico, straight face to face, just like you would to a human child. Nico, can you speak Spanish? Can you speak Spanish, Nico? Right? Nico, try to speak Spanish. There are other people in the lab who really quickly tired of that. They're like, that's worthless. What are you doing? So one lab member, Austin, grabs an Ethernet cord and just shoves it in the back of Nico's head, just jacks him in and said, I'll just override it at the keyboard, right? So he goes in there where we code and program, tries to choreograph a difference in the language. We have other people who are interacting with it in still different ways. So at one point, Nico didn't like being laid on the ground. We had laid him down so he couldn't fall. He has a little bit of a bum ankle, which is one of the things we kind of find endearing about him. Well, I laid him down like that. He didn't like it. He started looking around. He said, I seem to be laying down. I really need help getting up, right? But we didn't want him to get up. So I see one student start clapping at him, kind of like you would if your dog was about to have an accident on the carpet. No, Nico. No, Nico. Bad robot. All of these things are going on, and I realize there's no set way that we interface with this other. This is truly an other, and there are different approaches to it. For some people, it's a thing. This is just an it. Others immediately reached out as if it had some sort of humanness or animal relatability. And what fascinated me about it is that that's about us. That's not about Nico. That's about what we think about the relationship between human beingness and machine being, and possibly other things as well. So I really wanted to try to do some research that would help me explain the variance that I saw in reactions to Nico in the lab. This is just a quick little shot. That same day, Nico sneezed, which we didn't even know was something that Nico would do, and chaos ensued after that too. It's pretty delightful. So the research that I embarked on is in the general vein that we talk about as ontology. You probably encountered this terminology in your communication theory class if you've had one. And it's basically just a really, big specialized word for talking about what the nature of something really is. What does it mean to be a person? What does it mean to be a robot? What does it mean to be a machine? So I've been interested in these kind of questions since graduate school. I started off my career investigating people's underlying ideas about what communication really is, because we're all different on that too, and our different implicit definitions of what it is and how we can use it leads to differences in our behavior. And that's what ontology is for me. It's practical. It sounds heavily theoretical, and it is, but the importance of it is that these differences in what we think about the nature of things work themselves out into our ways of talking and treating other entities and other people. So when I started the background research on this project, one of the things I came across really quickly was the idea that if you want to understand the relationship between humans and machines, you also have to include a third thing in a triadic relationship. And that's how we think and talk about animals. So you can see right here a quote from Rene Descartes. Pretty much the history of Western philosophy is built on a comparison of animals to machines. Here he says, non-human animals are merely machines with parts assembled in intricate ways. And that general line of thinking would come to define how we think about animals in general and how we hold human beings as separate and apart on the basis of the possession of something like consciousness or reason or soul or intellect or any number of things that have been worked out in various philosophies. So comparing animals to machines has this really long history as an underpinning in Western philosophy. And this was really interesting. Anytime you start to compare human beings in a triadic relationship, animals tend to pop up. This is a passage here. Animals are beings with which we may have social relations. We feel sympathy and affection for them, but we also exploit them for benefit, company, sport, or nourishment. They are persons and things, friends and food. We communicate with them, we kill them. One of the things that strikes me about writing like this is that today you could take almost any passage like this and substitute the word social robot for animals and hold much of the same meaning. You might be thinking, well, we don't really eat them yet, right? We don't really eat them yet. We we do relate to them. But you'd be surprised, right? This is an ingestible robot. You swallow this thing, and this little robot will do surgery from the inside out. Sounds a little bit risky, though. We inject them into our own biological ecosystems already, just like we do with some animal and plant life. We wear them in order to strengthen our own response to a physical environment, to stay warm. We mount them and ride them. We fight them in proxy competitions, just like people sometimes do with animals. We collect their little bits and weave those into our popular portrayals of art and culture. This is one of my favorite quotes that helps me understand the relations between these entities. The machine might be called the postmodern animal. This is the idea that machines today are talked about much as we talked about animals a couple of centuries ago. We worry that deep down we're just like machines, whereas we used to worry we were basically wild animals. They haunt our dreams. They give us hopes for the future about what we might become if we try to see the best and most possible in them. But this idea of machines being a postmodern animal is something I think you'll start seeing as soon as you take a walk through any bookstore, toy store, or your news feeds. This is a book I'm reading with my daughter, Emerson. She's 10 years old now. We read a chapter of this at night. We're almost finished with it, but the idea is that this robot is shipwrecked on a desert island, comes out of the crate to find it lives with other animals, birds and squirrels, doesn't know what it is or where it came from exactly. Its whole life is about working that out in relation to the other creatures around it. It sounds very much like our journey on the planet as human beings, but also of the way we've described other wild animals. And this is a very pervasive theme, this whole idea of the robot in the wild or the garden. It's a consolidated cultural effort that shows us we are comparing machines and animals in very systematic ways and talking about their beingness as intertwined. So we've got that, comparisons between the animal and the machine. We've also got lots of prominent examples right now comparing human beings to machines. So the futurist Rodney Brooks there asserts that whether you're human or humanoid, made of flesh or metal, basically we're all just sociable machines. Another author below, that was Robin Marantz. Rodney Brooks is from Flesh and Machines is below. But we're all mechanistic. He says the minute surgery started to fix us, we realized in important ways that we're machines. We're gooey. We're super gooey on the inside. But we respond to mechanical interventions in ways that change the way that we think about ourselves. And of course, we've also got lots and lots of examples in culture of comparing human beings to animals. That last grouping in the triad, probably best popularized in the book The Third Chimpanzee, which is responsible for putting that notion out there into public consciousness and awareness that genetically, we wouldn't even be a separate species or genus. We would be so close genetically to a chimpanzee that we're basically the same thing in the animal kingdom. Right, so here's what I've been doing for a while. One of the ways that I've been getting at this question of the differences in how people think about human beings and robots and animals is to ask you to do this simple exercise. I've done it with my classes for a long time now, done it with kids, my daughter's classrooms, that kind of thing. But I want you to imagine that you've got three figures before you. Let's say you've got a human being, and you've got a humanoid robot, and you've got a hominid ape, right? So you've got these three things. And what if I gave you a very limited amount of time? 5 seconds, I said. You have to put the two of them that belong together in a group. Figure out which to go together and which one needs to be left apart, all by itself. Right? So you gotta make that call. Anybody want to share what you would do?
I do human and robot.
Human and robot together, why?
I don't like the monkey.
Just pure dislike. Yeah. How many of you agree with that? What's your name?
John.
John. How many of you agree with John? Human and robot, for whatever reason. You may like chimps, but you leave them alone. How many of you would put the human being with the chimpanzee and leave that machine, that robot all by itself? That's a much bigger group. Anybody put the chimp and the robot together? You did that? Why did you do it?
So the human is just a little bit more than the chimp or the more conscious or more able to make an emotional connection with.
More something, right? That's well said. Good, good. This kind of variance is typical. Even in a small group, I can have dinner with 4 of my friends and they won't agree on this question about which ones actually belong together. So to get a wider, more representative sample, I ran this through Amazon's Mechanical Turk. Is anybody using Mechanical Turk to earn extra money? A lot of college students do, but you can take surveys, basically do human intelligence tasks like coding or providing data for small fees. That's where I got this data. These were US American adults. On average, they were almost 40 years old. There were about 200 of them, and you've got their demographic complexion and gender complexion represented there. I asked them to do this, and here's what I found. By far, the most common choice was to link together the human and the chimpanzee. 77% of people said that's what they would do. Got 15% who said they would link together the human being with the robot, and then that leaves a very small group, only 7%, who said they would leave the human standing alone and make the other grouping. This is important because this thing that got only 7%, that was Descartes' whole idea, right? He's got to be rolling over in his grave right now because that's what he proposed as the way we should understand 3 entities like this anytime we're introduced to them. So what I did next was to ask them to explain why, and some of you may recognize your own reasoning or have things to add to your reasoning from this. So in that first grouping of people who put the chimpanzee and the human together, I coded their open-ended responses, and most of them focused on things like it's alive, which they linked to constructs of being an animal, of being sentient or aware of and responsive to its environment. They pointed out that both were social, and they pointed out that there was a sort of natural appearance on the planet, whether that was by a creator or a process of natural selection. This is what they stressed. When I asked these same people, well, what makes the robot different? Not surprisingly, they almost all mentioned its machine nature. And they also used words like it's artificial, it's human or man-made, it's not alive. There's a quote that's representative of many of their responses. It's a machine driven to act entirely by algorithms. That second group, the second most popular, grouped together the humanoid robot with the human being. Almost all of their explanations for why they did that is because they were sort of made by one another, co-produced, and meant to be together. So that resulted in a natural resemblance. Since we made robots, they're kind of created in a way that invites our interaction, our appreciation, and our acceptance of them. And they stressed a lot that you can get things done with another person. That's a lot easier with a robot than it is with the chimp. One of my favorite responses I didn't put up here. One of the people who made this grouping, when asked, why'd you leave the chimp out by itself, said, I just thought it would probably destroy either one if I put it in the other group. And that was pretty clever, right? They were afraid to leave a chimp alone with the others. When I asked this group what makes the ape different, they stressed its animal nature, the type of communication, the idea that it was wild and somehow less cultured than the robot or the human. This one also made me laugh. Chimpanzee is an animal. Chimps could actually learn a thing or two from the others. Could get over its chimp nature a little bit if it spent more time with humans and robots. And this last group, which was smaller than the others, but the one that Descartes would have advocated, which put together the chimp and the robot and held out the human being as something different. This answer is mostly focused on kind of like what you said, what a human being has that the other two don't. So it wasn't just that the two, like a chimp and a robot, are similar, it's that they hang together precisely because they're not human, precisely because they're different, and not just different like apples and oranges, but different in a way that we would consider inferior to some really important human values, right? Maybe consciousness, something like that. When asked what makes a human different, they focused on its exceptionalism. Its greater quantity of intelligence or logic or even status on the planet. That top one was one that I stressed in the subsequent chapter on this topic because it was really representative of what a lot of those comments distilled down to, into an essence, that they're somehow different and unique. All right, so after doing this, remember the reason I care about this at all is because it's supposed to make a practical difference. It's not just an interesting, this is how people group things, but there should be an impact in the way that we think and talk and treat these entities on the basis of those ontological classifications. So did anybody see the news? Boston Robotics made the news when they created this robotic dog Spot, and then proceeded to kick it in the promotional video. Did you see this video? It's another one of those things that gets a lot of variance in interpretation. So some people watch this. If I show it in a small interpersonal communication class, half the people will laugh because it slides on the eyes and tries to write itself. Half the people will gasp, like, I can't believe this just happened. This is terrible in the Netherlands. But things didn't go so well for Ed once it got to the United States. Why do we have to do this to it? But so it started on the East Coast. It made it from Boston to DC and then to Philadelphia. But in Philly, things went south fast. It was found murdered, or whatever, however you want to say it, dismembered in a public park. This is what happened. Trip is over, this person said when they shared it on social media, right? So what I wanted to know is, does the way people think about the differences between humans and animals and machines affect what they think about this, their basic reaction? Are they empathetic, or are they kind of like, what's the big deal? You know, this is a weird looking robot. So I asked them to read this coverage and then to weigh in. And what I found was that almost everybody thought this was wrong. Which probably reflects how you feel about it in this room. It seems senseless. Why did it need to happen? So almost everybody thought it was unacceptable. They thought it was immoral for one reason or another, and they thought they agreed on the typicality. I think this happens a lot with the way we treat machines that resemble us. But these open-ended responses, their reactions, did share a relationship with that grouping task that they did in the first place. And you might think about whether your own reaction to what happened to Hitchbot is linked at all to whether you think human beings stand alone, or they have more in common with robots or with hominoid apes or a higher order mammal like a chimp. So here's a rundown of what that research looked like. The people who said human beings are basically more like animals and the robot, this machine, stand on its own, they didn't like this, but they didn't like it because it was vandalism or senseless destruction. It's a great quote. It is wrong, but no more wrong than the destruction of a couch or dresser of equal value, right? It's just about what its worth was in a human commodity. The people who thought robots and humans were the most alike, the ones that really belonged together and different from this higher order mammal, tended to focus on things like abuse or cruelty towards a machine entity. Those are words we don't often toss around about mechanical entities, right? But here they're talking about it just like they would another person. It was eventually killed, just like it happens to us, so sad. Or this one suggesting that we follow some sort of justice. You know, unless he's hurting someone, leave him alone, he didn't do anything. And then you've got your final group here. These were people who really stressed that human beings were different, that they were separate, and that they had more of something that we consider very important. They were far less bothered about it. They thought it was wrong because of what it did to other people. They'd say things like, those professors worked hard to make it, and you just destroyed what they had going. Or, you know, they would sometimes justify it a little bit. They'd say, yeah, it's wrong, but I wish there wasn't so much newspaper coverage about it because real people are dying, or real sentient animals are being hurt. It was interesting because around the time of this news, the team was in Japan presenting some research findings at the International Communication Association. And then almost the same week, Hitchbot was destroyed. Do you remember when an American hunter killed Cecil the lion in Africa? Do you remember that? And a lot of questions we would get in Japan from people was like, why? You know, why would you do that? Americans are the worst, killing the animals, killing the machines. They very much linked the two, and Japanese culture is interesting in that regard. They're much more protectionist about their machine intelligences and beings than we are right now. So I thought that was very interesting that they saw those commonalities. So what do we take from this? I think one thing that it's safe to say is that people vary in their understanding of the natures of the relationships between these three things. And that those matter because they influence their judgments about things that we all consider important and worth talking about. I think those judgments are only going to get more critical as we have some real debates about the place of these machines in our societies. But they also likely relate to how we communicate with and about one another. What you think about robots, that shouldn't affect how you treat people, right? Shouldn't necessarily have anything to do with that, but it does filter into our discourses. This is a great example. There's a lot of talk about robots in the last presidential scene writ large, but this was a political cartoon that sought to disqualify two contenders for the Republican nomination before Trump won it. So this is Chris Christie being likened to an animal who can't control himself. He's disqualified from presidency. And Marco Rubio, who's robotic, he's programmed, he's disqualified as well, right? We have stories and commentary comparing Hillary Clinton to a robot. Has anybody done the 30-day yoga challenge with Adrienne? Seems like a random question. It's really good. One thing I noticed as I'm working my way through that is that she constantly, are you doing it?
Yeah.
You're doing it. I mean, you know how she talks about yoga robots. No yoga robots. It is code for you're doing it wrong. You should be having animal nature here, a connection with your breath and with life. So we use those things. Our ideas about what's good and bad about robots and animals also get applied to other people when we think we recognize mechanistic or animalistic dimensions in their behavior. Right? We use those categories to judge one another. So for future research, what we're thinking about on the team is thinking about how much can we blur the boundaries between humans, machines, and animals? Would it be more productive, instead of thinking you've got three separate figures, to think all of us have a little bit of both? Like maybe you've got an inner machine and also an inner animal, but you're still a human being. And maybe there are human components of the things we build and animal components of them as well. And to think as much as classification, not just putting things in group, but identifications. What little choices in the way we talk encourage us to think this is more like that, and I should treat it differently on the basis of that. All right, so I am really excited if we have time to hear your comments or questions.